Are you still putting sadness on the stack?
I will always put sadness on the stack. Does it resolve those? The question.
Welcome back, friends, to Hometown Commander. I am, of course, your host, Mikey, and with me, as always, is
Your boy, Millzy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Today, we're going to be doing our first head-to-head lovely episode of beautifulness. Maybe. We'll see what happens.
Just maybe.
We'll see where it goes, honestly. Hopefully, the conversation will take us to a point of enlightenment of this certain commander that we never even thought of.
Or to the wonderful world of magical Christmas land where everything goes the way we want it to go.
Or we'll just go back and play 5-color land.
Good stuff.
Landfall or something.
Draft chat.
Well, guys, welcome back. We're super excited to just talk about this greatness. But before we do, got any great stories to talk about there, Millzy?
No, I mean, in the last week or so since we recorded the intro episode, as a way to pull back the curtains for the listener, we haven't really played that too much Magic together as a play group. I've been doing a lot of brewing, of course, the thing I love to do. I've got some new piles that I need to put together, and I'm kind of excited about. But of course, we're fastly approaching. Well, what you as a listener, when you hear this, it will be past Christmas. But for us in magical recording land, it is almost Christmas, so we are very excited about that.
You mean the present time?
Yes, the present time.
Okay. Well, we're doing time travel now.
Yes, we are. Welcome to Hometown Commander, where we do time travel. No, to be honest, just we got our box of Strixhaven that we went in together, and we
collector's box. Yeah,
didn't do terrible. I mean,
no, we didn't get the demonic tutor that we
joked about,
that we harped on for about 30 minutes in the last episode. But that's beside the point.
Other than that, man, not really much going on. How about you?
Yeah, I like I said, I went and seen Spider-Man last night. It is a beautiful movie full of wonderfulness. Spoiler warning. No, I'm just kidding. I will not say anything else about it other than it is great. I loved it. I knew I was going to cry, so I cried.
Well, that's good.
I cried at a joke.
Oh, man.
It was a funny joke.
It's only better if you cried at a joke.
And I just cried. And a child next to me was like, the heck is wrong with this adult child man thing?
Well, Mikey, we have fun things to announce this morning.
We do. Like our wonderful links, we have a Discord. The link for our Discord will be in the show notes. You will get to join up, talk to us, and I will call you a scrubby bubble. That's going to be my new word for scrubs. I just want to call people scrubby bubbles now.
I don't agree, but hey, that's what makes this a podcast.
It makes me feel like you should feel worse for being called a scrub. So if I call somebody a scrub, it's because I love you. If I call you a scrubby bubble, it's because I love you even more.
Yeah.
You scrubby bubble.
You scrubby bubble. And for the listeners out there, there is no cost to join our Discord. It is free for you for putting up with us for an hour of your time. And we would love to talk to you in the Discord. As well as we have a potential sponsorship. I feel like sponsorship is kind of in quotations because it's not really a sponsorship, but it is a discount code over at Rogue Energy. Rogue Energy is a powdered drink product that you put in water and shake up, and it gives you caffeine and vitamins with all that nasty sugar.
Millzy, give him a nice little take of the sound you will hear if you use Rogue Energy. I want to hear that. I want to hear that shaker cup.
Should I shake it up into the mic?
Oh, I want it.
So there you get the shake there. I'm going to take a drink of the strawberry lemonade flavor. Whole plug right there.
Whole plug.
That's jammy. But anyway, you can use our code HOMETOWN, all capital, no space in between, for potentially 5% off. Not quite sure. Just set it up. Could be more, could be less. That's what we love about this podcast. But anyway, check that out.
Let us know. Here's what you do. You use code HOMETOWN. Use code HOMETOWN for the 5% off at checkout for Rogue Energy. Then come join our Discord. Tell us how much you actually got off. And then we're going to be excited for you nonetheless. We're going to give you a firm handshake through Discord. I don't know.
Only through Discord.
Only through Discord.
Yeah.
Because, we can't do that in person. That's weird. No one wants to give a random handshake to a random person nowadays, right?
I feel like business people are really good at giving handshakes.
They really are. It's so funny. To tie it all back, this whole week, I've been talking about handshakes with a lot of people. I don't know why. Like this third grader, I introduced to pull back the curtain. I work at an elementary school as of right now, and I introduced this third grader that I'm pretty dang sure is going to be the president of the United States when he grows up.
Wow,
he's an incredible person.
We're what, 30 or 40 years away from that happening?
No, hopefully by then I will actually vote for a president. But I introduced him to the principal, and I was like, "Yeah, man, like you should like shake her hand so you can actually get to know her." And he was like, I've never shook a hand. And I was like, oh, here we go. We're going to teach this man right now. Oh, it's hilarious.
Who doesn't love a too strong handshake? You know what I mean? Those handshakes where the grip is a little too tight and you're like, wow, I'm currently in this moment. You know what I mean?
Like break your hand kind of moment. So like my dad, he is a big man. He is 6'6", almost 300 pounds, right? And he is just this ginormous Goliath to my David, being me, 5'8", like 140 soaking wet. And shaking his hand every single time, I don't do it because I know it hurts. So I just give him that firm little like high five, and then I'm like, yeah, bro, hug, because you're my dad. I should hug you. And then it gets awkward because no one wants to hug their dad either.
We apologize to the hometown listeners who want to hug their dad.
This
is not the official position of hometown commander. But
okay, I guess I shouldn't say no one. I should say like most people I know do not want to hug their dad.
I feel like we need to make a list on a future website of the positions that we as hometown commander take on random issues.
Don't start fires.
Hug your dad.
Hug your dad, unless you don't want to hug your dad. Yeah. Oh my.
Oh man, we're gonna get canceled. I don't know what for, but
no, we're gonna get canceled because it's like somebody's gonna come up to me. He's like, I don't even know my dad, and I'll be like, I knew it. I knew I should have said it.
As a spoiler for the people who are going to get on the Discord, I am not going to apologize in advance for the Urza joke that I made somewhere on the Discord. If you have a problem with it, I would love to talk to you about why you're wrong, but that's not
Listen, Urza's not the commander we're talking about today, but let me tell you, like I said, I did a bad thing last night. I started looking at two things. One of them I hate, and I'm like, why am I looking at this commander? And that was Kozilek. And I was just like, I hate Eldrazi and everything they stand for. Why am I looking at this guy?
Because they're good?
Well, not only that, because I wanted to play... I want to somehow play like a Tron style deck.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how to do that, so I'm trying to learn.
Mikey, I know that we like to have a lot of interesting ideas, and we try our best to,
I see where this is
get
going.
ourselves in too much trouble. But this isn't modern, Mikey. This is Commander. Okay, we don't play Tron and Commander.
Why can't we? Why can't we? So then I also...
Do you know how difficult it is to find 3 specific lands and 99 cards consistently? In colorless?
Yeah.
Are you seeing the problem?
There is none. I don't know what you're talking about. You're still playing Eldrazi. I think you still win game, right?
I have one Eldrazi in one deck. I don't know if that's even considered... Well, it is.
He is definitely a game ender. That is show. Then I also started looking at your favorite commander, Urza, for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man...
Did your computer combust out of curiosity?
It was on my phone and it got really hot, so
wow.
that makes you feel any better. Which is funny because he's a mono blue. I figured it would get really cold or water would start spewing out of the charging port.
I am slightly afraid of what the Brothers War is going to bring us next year when it comes to artifacts.
I was literally about to say that. I was like, maybe I should just wait to build like my stupid artifact deck until Brothers War. That's one of my biggest problems I think that I'm having is I know what's coming. So I'm like, oh, I could build a deck around this, and then I'm like, well, maybe I should wait. Like the werewolves thing. Like I was like, oh, I was gonna build a werewolf deck, and I like completely like back in like July scrapped it, and then was like, nah, I'll wait until we get these beautiful pieces of dogs that are coming.
Well, Mikey, it's interesting that you would mention werewolves. Who is our commander that we're speaking about today?
Oh man, we got the goodest of good boys. His name is Tovolar, Dire Overlord.
His name is Tovolar.
Dire
Overlord.
He is a legendary creature, human werewolf, for 1 colorless mana, 1 red mana, and 1 green mana. He's a 3/3. His ability says, whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Drawing cards in a card
Always
game.
Good.
Always good. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, at the beginning of your turn, before you do anything, if you control 3 or more wolves and or werewolves, it becomes night.
Ow, ow.
Ow, ow. For show. Then transform any number of human werewolves you control. He has Daybound as well, which Can you go into depth of the nighttime, daytime joke that is nighttime? What is it? No, it's nighttime, daybound? No, that's not right.
Daybound, nightbound.
Is it literally called nightbound? I feel dumb now.
Yeah, so Daybound, nightbound is a new mechanic that Wizards introduced in our most recent trip to Innistrad that we just got finished with. And it was their way of correcting the old werewolf mechanic, but just in a different way. So the old werewolves said whenever a player casted 2 or more spells during any turn, it becomes daytime from nighttime. But the new one says that if a player casts 2 or more spells during their turn, it flips from nighttime to daytime. So the caveat now is not players casting spells on other players' turns, it is the turn player. So if they cast no spells, it would flip from night or day to night. If they cast 2 spells, it would flip from night to day. Now all of the new werewolves, most of the new werewolves, have day and nightbound on them. So the way that the day and night cycle works is they will transform automatically when that changes. There's no trigger, they just change.
Which we can both agree is just arguably better.
Yes, I think my problem, to pull back the curtain as a Gruul player and someone who's played werewolves in the past and built this deck before Midnight Hunt, is that I love that Tovolar has. So for the listener out there who's never played werewolves or this is your first time seeing Tovolar, which I'd be very surprised at, the ability that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more wolves or werewolves, it becomes night. Then it says transform any number of human werewolves you control. That text is there so that Tovolar can transform the old werewolves who do not have day and night bound, which is actually very important because old cards like Moon Mist and these cards that say transform all werewolves you control do not work on the new werewolves. Any werewolf that has day and night bound on the card is not able to be transformed except by the day and night mechanic. So there's kind of this dichotomy that's been created for these werewolves where we now have a splitting line down the middle of playability, right? Because now we have all these new effects, but all these old werewolf cards don't necessarily work on the new ones. Now, I wanted the old ones to be eroded into day and night bound because to me, they're effectively the same thing. Now, Wizards disagrees. They feel like there's a stark difference, and so for that reason, they've chosen not to errata all the old werewolves. So my advice to the listener out there, if you want to build this deck, talk to your playgroup. See if your playgroup is okay with you playing them as day and night bound, and if not, Tovolar does have the ability to flip them over.
This is true. I know that when you have a Tovolar deck, you play...
Spoilers.
It's not a spoiler. If you're listening, listen. He's a Gruul player. He likes the Wolf Boys. He has a deck. Moving on. You play the ruleistic way. That's definitely not a word I know, but like you play by Wizard of the Coast rules. I feel like when you play yours, like we haven't said, hey, play by the rules to you, or you haven't asked us like, hey, what if I play this way? You just kind of already do what the card says to do, and that's okay.
Yeah, the big 2 things for me have been, one, if I'm going to take it to a shop, I can't assume that other players are going to let me do that.
Yeah.
And the second is, so out of transparency, my list today for this head-to-head episode is the actual list that I have running in my test box. That's put about halfway together, and I have chosen to front load a lot more of the new werewolves versus the old ones, and I'll explain why a little bit later when we get into more of the strategy of our decks. But that has definitely helped me a ton, is front loading more of the new day nightbound werewolves instead of the older werewolves.
I have to pause you for a second because we haven't even told people this was a head-to-head episode. What are we doing with this? What are we doing? What are we doing with this head-to-head?
You did mention it at the beginning, so...
Oh, we did? Oh, we did? Oh.
But you didn't explain it. So for those of us listening, if this is your first time listening to our podcast, I'm very sorry that we got, I don't know how many minutes into the episode without telling you what we're doing this morning.
15.
But if you listen to the first episode, you will know that head-to-head is an idea we have where both of us take a commander or a strategy. We are going to each build a list, and then we're going to compare and contrast and talk about how we built our decks individually. Now, if you're interested in either of our deck lists, there's going to be a link in the show notes on whatever platform you're on to go to our mocks field page for our podcast, and you will see both of our deck lists labeled with probably some stupid pun in our names on them so that you can see them, you can use them, and as we said in the intro episode, our hope is that you'll take these decks, test them out into your playgroup or in your shop, and make them your own.
For sure, for sure.
I realized we didn't read the backside of Tovolar.
Well, I was about to ask you about the
Midnight Scourge.
Yes.
The backside, same thing. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it's great that we get that on both sides.
Yes.
But the big thing we get on the backside is actually a pretty popular land that most people played in the old werewolves, and that's X red green. Target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X/+0 and gains trample until the turn, which is Kessig Wolfrun.
Yes.
Interesting that fits thematically, right? But Kessig Wolfrun is a great effect. The best part about Tovolar here is that he doesn't have to tap to use the effect like you had to with Kessig Wolfrun,
right.
And it is at instant speed, and that is great.
Now, you could also pay for it multiple times, correct?
You most certainly can.
Yeah.
And the interesting part here, Mikey, is that you don't have to put any value into the X. You can just play red-green and give a creature trample, which is huge. Now remember, it is also at instant speed, which means you can do that after blockers.
Yes.
Which makes it huge. My advice about Tovolar is I think he looks like a very interesting card, but just remember that backside is huge. And at least for me, when we're playing with Day and Nightbound, we want to use that to our advantage during the night, because almost all of the new wolves are way better on their night side than they are on their day side.
Yeah, your werewolves for sure. My goodness, those backsides that I keep looking at cards that we've pulled, or I pulled over the past couple of months from both Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt, and because I continue to unfortunately buy Midnight Hunt packs for some weird reason. I don't know why.
Who doesn't just buy random product?
Keep buying product.
I'm sorry, listener, if you don't buy random product, but for us weirdos, we just buy random product.
Yeah, for sure. But I love just looking at just their abilities and laughing at how wonky they are, and I'm just like, why does a card do this? And I'm like, oh, it's the backside. You got to kind of wait a little bit. You got to pay the mana. Then you got to hope that you'll get the backside over there. But that's what's so cool about Tovolar is he gives you that at the beginning of your turn.
Remember, only at the beginning of your turn, though.
This is true only at the beginning of your turn. But let's be serious. You want it at the beginning of your turn because that's when you're going to be swanging. And you're going to be trying to, I don't know, kill your opponent with that swang.
So I think, Mikey, this is the fun time where we get to talk about how we built our decks. What is our main strategy? Every deck has a strategy, right? Every deck has a way we want to win. I think it's fairly obvious what my choice was here, and that's combat, right? If creatures are good for one thing, it's swanging and doing damage.
You want to turn the cards sideways.
And in this deck, I think we get all of the some very great enablers for combat. In my list, you're going to see a lot of enchantments and artifacts and spells that are going to allow us to push combat to our advantage. I think some of the huge ones are trampler enablers like Garruk's Uprising or Howlpack Resurgence, or a lot of those types of enchantments. We have stuff like Dolmen Gate, which is going to prevent combat damage dealt to our attacking creatures, which gives us almost crazy advantage, even swinging with our 2/2s. As well as we do have one extra combat spell in there just for the flavor.
I love how you have Vivian in here, which give your creatures flash. I think that's cool because you're still centered around combat here, and if you need that extra blocker for some weird reason, you throw them in there.
Well, I think the big thing that Vivian enables, especially for Tovolar, is remember that all of our new werewolves flip at the same time, Daybound, Nightbound. Remember that they all enter at whatever time of day it is. If it's day, they enter on the front side. If it's night, they enter on the back side. But remember, it becomes night when I don't cast a spell. So if I cannot cast a spell on my turn, pass my turn, and then play all of my creatures on my opponent's turns, it hopefully will become night back on my turn when Tovolar's out. Now, Mikey, if you remember the game or two that we played our most recent time, you notice that I did a lot of flashing Tovolar in before my turn.
Yes.
So that I had him on the battlefield and able to flip my board when it came back to my turn. As well as enabling that night, so on that first person's turn, maybe I don't become a good attack target because all my werewolves are a lot bigger than they would be normally. The other thing about that is that there are one or two cards like Night Pack Ambusher that give an anthem to all my wolves. Well, that's a cool thing to flash in the middle of combat, maybe to make my make your blocks less advantageous because you think you have a good block, and then you get to flash it in. Now, Vivian works really well with Nightpack Ambusher, because Nightpack Ambusher says if I don't cast a spell on my turn, I get a 2/2 wolf token, which is great, right? Because that just adds to my numbers for Tovolar. The only bad part about Vivian is that green doesn't really get an easy way to search planeswalkers like other colors do. So Vivian, unfortunately, is a key part of my deck, but it's kind of hard to find sometimes. The positive that we have, though, is we're going to be drawing a lot of cards with Tovolar.
Yeah,
he allows us to draw so many cards, and that's a really good thing. You know, I play the Reliquary Tower. I've considered Thought Vessel as well, just to allow us to have that no maximum hand size. But I think Reliquary Tower helps us a ton in keeping a lot of those cards in our hand, and then hopefully putting them down when it's advantageous to us. The other kind of petty type card that I've put in my deck that I really enjoy is In Search of Greatness. It was an enchantment released in Kaldheim. The way it works is you can play a card at the start of your upkeep for free, as long as it has one more CMC than the highest CMC card in your battlefield that isn't In Search of Greatness. So if Tovolar is the highest CMC on the battlefield, you can play a 4 CMC card from your hand for free. Now, the way you can stack your triggers, hopefully, and I could be wrong, I haven't tested this, is you could hopefully do that before Tovolar's trigger goes off, and you may be able to get that third werewolf down and then flip. Now, that'll come down to whether Tovolar's trigger is a trigger or a state-based thing, and I don't know that off the top of my head. That's something I'd have to get the ruling on. But still, either way, putting a 4 CMC werewolf down for free out of your hand is really good. And guess what the downside to In Search of Greatness is? If you don't have one, you get to scry 1 before you draw. Scry 1 in green? I'll take it.
Every day. Every day.
So I think that's just a huge card for 2 green mana that can help us push our strategy forward. If we have creatures out, it can get our big enchantments down as well for free. Remember, it doesn't just have to be a creature you put down, it's any permanent with that CMC. So you can get an artifact down, you can get an enchantment down. So, man, can you imagine having a 6 CMC werewolf or 7 CMC werewolf and putting the Great Henge down for free? Now, that's a bad example, because when you reduce its CMC with his ability, it doesn't actually work with In Search of Greatness. But imagine putting a Beastmaster Ascension down for free because you have a 2 CMC werewolf, or something like that. Just think about all the interactions you have with your enchantments and your artifacts just based upon In Search of Greatness. Now, the only caveat to that is In Search of Greatness doesn't count. So if you have In Search of Greatness out, you don't just get a 3 CMC for free. It has to be something else. So that's the only downside. But I think that downside is more than worth that scry.
Yeah, no, definitely. Scrying in anything that's not blue, or sometimes white, is just great. Because, I mean, just knowing what you're going to get next, especially when you have a commander like Tovolar that says, hey, draw a card, you're going to know what that card is. You're going to want to know what that card is. Or maybe you don't if you're crazy. But scrying and then drawing is definitely the play every single day of the week. If you can get it in any color, like I said, besides blue and maybe white, like, that's straight value.
So, Mikey, I love your list, because your list took the wolf token route, which I think is definitely a way to do it. You're playing a lot of the cards from the original Innistrad block, or the Shadows of Innistrad block, that you would play if you cared a lot about wolf tokens. And it really intrigues me, because it definitely wouldn't have been the way I chose to go with it, but I still think it's really viable.
Yeah, I was looking at it from a lens that a lot of people probably wouldn't look at Tovolar. I feel like if Tovolar had a precon, or if werewolves had a precon, this is absolute no offense.
Still big mad about that, by the way. We'll let that go.
We are all big mad about that. But this is not a jab at you, I promise. But I feel like your list would be very similar to what a precon-esque style would look like, I feel like.
Without the rares, of course, because, heaven forbid we put rares on a precon, but...
Heaven forbid. But then I was like, okay, what can I do that would be very, 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 very different, that would be very interesting? And I also had tokens on the brain anyway, with, I was making green-white tokens as well, so it was literally had one tab open of green-white humans, and one tab open was Tovolar wolf tokens, and that's what I just kind of want to do with this. I want to put as many wolf tokens down as I possibly can. And yeah, they're all going to be 2/2s, but the thing is I'll have so many out there that I don't really care that they're 2/2s. I don't need Tovolar's backside to rely on for his, get +1 plus X plus 0 and then gain trample. I have a few enablers of that in myself.
Because there are no lack of green trample enablers.
I was literally about to say that.
Especially considering one or two of them care about wolves, right? Howlpack Resurgence, and Mike, if you can remember it before I can, the enchantment. I feel bad for not thinking of this off the top of my head.
Are you talking about Howlpack? Oh, you already said Howlpack Resurgence.
Full Moon's Rise.
Yes.
Is the other one that gives all your wolves and werewolves trample. So, great, right?
Yeah.
Because both of those give you trample and a little buff.
Exactly. I added Xenagos. I'm pretty sure you have Xenagos in yours as well, correct?
I can't recall whether I do, but
You do.
It does look like I do.
You
Yeah.
do.
It kind of seems free to me. I don't know about how you, the listener, feel about Xenagos, but for me, it's red-green. We play Xenagos.
Let's be serious. If you're playing red-green and if you're doing anything with combat, you play Xenagos.
Now, I'm also playing Xenagos because I have it as a dirty search target. If I need a good enabler for power, toughness, it's there. Now, Mikey, the other thing I want to point out about your list is that you have beaten my list in flavor solely because you are playing that third Arlen Planeswalker card. Now, both of us are playing the two main Planeswalker cards that most people think of Arlen. Arlen Court, of course, from Shadows of Innistrad, and the new Arlen, the Pax Hope, out of Midnight Hunt, but you are playing Arlen, Voice of the Pack from War of the Spark, which of course cares a lot more about those wolf tokens, although she does give all of us a buff, all of our wolves a buff. But I think you get the flavor one there for playing 3 of them, whereas I am only playing 2. Now, my third Planeswalker slot, as Mikey mentioned before, goes to Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, because I think we can take advantage of a lot of the flash, as well as searching the top of our deck for more creature cards. But I like seeing the similarity we have in looking at what's a good Planeswalker card to play in our deck, but I love seeing that your third choice plays into your strategy and that my third choice plays into my strategy.
Exactly. I saw as many wolf tokens as I possibly could, so I took all 3 Arlens, like you said. They all create some kind of 2/2 wolf. I took I just had him, Tovolar's Huntmaster, which I also see that you have in yours.
Oh, what a card.
That card is beautiful because it's a 6 excuse me. Oh
it's a 6 mana.
It's a 6 mana. That is a 4 colorless, 2 green for a 6/6. This ability says when Tovolar's Huntmaster enters the battlefield, create a 2. That is dose. That is 2 of them. 2/2 green wolf creature tokens. Good for me.
And it gets even better.
Oh, it definitely gets better. Look at that backside and give it to them, Millzy.
Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, so if it still enters on its Nightbound side, you still get them, or when it attacks, you create the 2/2/2s. That's already good, listeners.
Can we just
But what's
continue to say
even
2/2/2s?
better is for 4 mana, 2 colorless, 2 green, another target wolf or werewolf you control fights a creature you don't control at instant speed.
Yes!
Mikey, at instant speed. Not at sorcery speed like you could when you play a spell from your hand. At instant speed. It's so good. Remember that says another wolf or werewolf you control, so unfortunately you can't fight with Tovolar's Pack Leader as it is on its backside.
Who cares?
But man, you have some beautiful 2/2s. One of my favorite plays with Tovolar's Pack Leader, so the backside of Tovolar's Huntmaster, is when you're in combat, you made those 2/2/2s that you can't attack with this turn. You could still fight with them, though.
There it is. Yep.
And you can use one of them to potentially lower the toughness of a creature that's blocking, or even eliminate a creature from blocking.
Exactly.
Which is huge.
Exactly.
Now, Mikey, I think this brings us to one of the big...
Or hang on, before you continue, I had this combo in my mind. This is why I wanted to highlight Xenagos. I was bringing the two together. So, beginning of combat, you use Xenagos' ability, where it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is that creature's power. So, I mean, you give it to probably like your biggest creature, probably, or even if you just give it to a 2/2, that makes it a 4/4. Okay, most creatures in Commander range anywhere between probably from 2 to 6. That's like your
average creature,
your big
yeah.
average creature, yeah. Which if you have a 4/4 down, honestly, in Commander, I feel like you're doing a good thing. You're scary if you have a 4/4. So if I have a 4/4 wolf, then I have the backside of the wonderful Tovolar Huntmaster. Now he's Tovolar's Pack Leader at instant speed for 4 mana. Man, I hope you have 4 mana. You're playing green, the rampiest of ramps. you don't even swing yet. You just hit somebody with that 4/4 that has trample, so then you just wait to destroy something that's maybe a 3/3 where you only get that 1 damage trample in, to where now they don't have that 3/3, they only have like a bunch of 1/1s, so you swang.
And remember, Mikey, like the beautiful part about Nightbound is that they turn to Nightbound when you don't cast spells on your turn. Man, if I have 8 mana and a Tovolar's Pack Leader out, I can do some damage not on my own turn.
Yep.
Which is great. Now the big difference we're seeing here is I chose to play a lot more into the Daybound Nightbound mechanic.
I never thought about fighting another target creature on someone else's turn until just now, and that just makes me cry. Oh no!
So I am playing a lot more into Daybound Nightbound. Yeah. I made the count. I'm playing 12 of the new available wolves and werewolves that have Daybound Nightbound.
Nice.
Not including Tovolar, of course. I am playing just a handful of the old ones, mainly just the ones that give us abilities or bonuses. I am playing both of our original commanders, Ulrich and Huntmaster of the Fells, as well as Immerwolf. Immerwolf is probably going to be one of the most expensive creature cards you see in these decks, and one that you're going to see in every deck, and that's because Immerwolf is a 2/2 for 3, 1 red-green. It has Intimidate, and it says other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1, but the big text on Immerwolf, and the reason we care about it, is it says non-human werewolves you control can't transform. This actually stops our Nightbound wolves from transforming back to Daybound, even if it becomes Daybound. Unfortunately, Wizards hasn't done a very good job at completely stating how transforming is going to work from now on. There are some pick and choose rules. So, for example, like I said before, older cards like Moonmist and those kind of cards cannot transform Daybound werewolves into their Nightbound side, but Immerwolf can stop Nightbound werewolves from transforming back into their Daybound side, which is intriguing because it kind of seems like it's both ends of the spectrum there, right? Like, it doesn't seem to really make a ton of sense. But just so you know, you cannot transform a Day or Nightbound werewolf except by the Day or Nightbound mechanic, or by, of course, Tovolar is going to transform our old werewolves when its ability goes off. You can still use your original Innistrad cards to transform your old werewolves. They just cannot touch the new ones. But any Immerwolf and other cards that say that they can't transform will prevent them from flipping back over to their Daybound side. So I want to make sure we mention that because it's something that's not 100% obvious when you're looking at this for the first time, and I want to make sure you as the listener understand the way that interaction works and why Immerwolf is very important, especially if we can get our wolves over to the night side. Now, I hear you asking yourself, but Millzy, if we have Immerwolf out and it's Daybound, is that going to stop our werewolves from transforming? And the answer to that, listener, is no, because if you'll notice that every werewolf, I think, in printing, maybe besides Werewolf Pack Leader or some other ones, are humans on their front side. So they're going to still transform. But notice that Immerwolf says non-human because every werewolf is not a human on their backside. So that is the caveat there. We want to make sure we get them to their backsides, and then they will never transform back. And let me tell you, every single werewolf that Wizards of the Coast has ever printed is a lot better on its backside than it is on its front side.
Agreed. We can 100%.
So you'll notice, you see my list, that I'm trying to use things like the Celestis and Unnatural Moonrise and some cards to get myself to Nightbound, even if Tovolar's not out, because all of my cards get a lot better when they're on the night side than when they are on the day side. Of course, I want to use Tovolar to flip them because he's the easiest way to do it. But if I don't have Tovolar out, one of my favorite cards that most people probably are going to overlook when they build their Tovolar lists is Unnatural Moonrise. For red and a green, it says it becomes night. Until end of turn, target creature gets +1/+1/+0 and gains trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And it flashes back for 2 red-green.
Again, you're
notice that
cards.
the first text on that card is it becomes night. Remember that night just doesn't affect that the one creature that you're targeting with the +1/+0. That means every Daybound werewolf on your board, it now becomes night, and they all flip. The second part of that is you're getting the trample and you're getting that draw card even when Tovolar isn't out, which is great. But this card can flip an entire board of werewolves to Nightbound and probably get you some damage you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. I think this card is scary, and with the right board and the right push, this card could end a game in your main phase because someone may not be able to get a block once you flip all your werewolves over.
I agree. One thing I happen to notice though is what I do kind of like about the new daybound nightbound mechanic is this is what I was remembering from our pre-release little tourney that we did was if it was nighttime, every werewolf transformed. That means yours and mine, which I really, really enjoyed. So something like Unnatural Moonrise, when it says it becomes night, if you're playing against another werewolf deck, that's something you kind of have to remember in your head.
Or any deck that has any of their day or nightbound permanents, because it's not just werewolves, right? There are other creatures that are day nightbound, or spells that care about day and night. So if your opponent has a Celestis, you need to be careful because you will trigger their Celestis as well.
This is true.
Yes, that is a very good point that we need to be careful. But in any good combat-driven deck, I consider Tovolar to be a very good mid-range commander. He's a lot better mid-range than he is aggressive. We want to use these effects to our advantage to push our advantage to win. And I would hope that if we're playing another werewolf deck, we're only using Unnatural Moonrise when we're in a position to do more damage.
Of course.
So I think that is a fair point.
Of course.
The big thing for me about this list that I think you're taking advantage of in your list as well is that we're not playing Tovolar as an aggressive deck. Mm-hmm. So our goal is to not necessarily always drop Tovolar on turn 3. My focus has been, let's drop him on turn 4 or 5 once we've ramped, and let's get him and another werewolf out at the same time. Let's start building our board in more of a mid-range fashion, that turn 4 through 6. Let's let that be our window where we're pushing our creatures forward and not turn 3. Because A, we have to protect Tovolar. If I drop him on turn 3, and he's probably catching a removal spell in the next turn or 2. But not only that, it feels kind of odd to go from 0 creatures on board on turn 2 to just Tovolar on board turn 3. I don't know that it helps us.
It doesn't because of his second ability on the front side where it says at the beginning of your upkeep. You can't use that. You can't transform him or anything else after you play him. So putting in that third creature being Tovolar, I don't think that works at all. You either use him early, maybe he's your first or second creature. I would feel bad if that's your first or second creature, but if it is, then that's what happens.
If he needs to be, he's a good choice. Like if you need a blocker, I try my best in my strategy, and I think Mikey, you saw that a week or so ago when I played the deck, was to have Tovolar be that second or third creature I get out and not the first.
Yes.
If you can get an Arlen Planeswalker out, or you can get some other smaller werewolves that we're playing in the list out first, Tovolar gets infinitely better. Because remember, you get Tovolar's ability without attacking with him.
Yeah.
That whenever that a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card, happens whether he attacks or not.
And that's combat damage from each of those wolf or werewolves.
So you attack with 3 wolves, even if they block. If you trample over or if you hit for free for 3, you're drawing 3.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, that is not a May. So you do need to be careful sometimes that you're not overloading your hand and drawing too much.
Yeah.
I doubt that'll ever become an issue, but just be careful with that is not a May.
Yeah, I agree. Stuff like Reliquary Tower and Thought Vessel could be an option for sure. I personally don't see my list doing that too much because I'm going really wide. I won't have that huge creature that will be doing so much damage, but I will be looking for the advantageous attacks that will be trying to get me that card draw if he is out. I also was trying my hardest to put together a list that can survive without Tovolar, because we've seen so many times where we'll get our commander out, and I mean he's a 3/3, so he's pretty easy to get bolted. But if he gets bolted twice, well, now that 3 mana turns into 7, and that's a lot for just a 3/3. Granted, his ability is great, but
I think that's why I built into the Daybound Nightbound mechanic, is so that the rest of my werewolves at least have some parity on their own. Now, that, of course, I said before, I'm playing some old werewolves, the good ones, the ones that are going to help us a ton, as well as I'm playing some wolves. But remember that the Daybound Nightbound mechanic doesn't even necessarily care about Tovolar. It continues to be tracked throughout the game. So if your opponent before you doesn't play a spell, free value on my turn, right?
Agreed, yeah.
Or this is where the Vivian thing comes into huge advantage. If I don't have Tovolar out, I can still manipulate Day and Nightbound to my advantage on my own board. That is where cards like Unnatural Moonrise and the Celestis, which you have to remember has a mana ability to change it to night, which is huge. I've never used it yet because I've never had the Celestis out in the 6 games I've played with this deck so far, which makes me really mad.
Yeah.
But being able to change it to night for free on your turn helps you a lot when you're playing a lot of creatures that share that daybound, nightbound mechanic. So, Mikey, I think we've done a pretty good job at banging out our strategy, what we want to do. Let's talk a little bit about what we want to see in a hand. I don't want to talk about Magical Christmas Land, where what is your perfect opening hand, but what are you, Mikey, what are you looking for in your opening hand to keep a hand? Not a 1 or 2 specific cards, but maybe ratios of lands to spells. What are we looking for that's going to say, hey, this is the land, this is the hand I want to keep, or this is the hand that I'm looking for?
Well, I mean, it's red, green, well, 1, I think. You're definitely going to want, the perfect outcome would be, of course, a mountain and a forest in hand, or access to both colors in hand.
For sure.
For me, when I play my Xenaghost deck, I'm always looking for a hand that at least has 1 dual land.
If you can.
I can. Even if that's my only land, I will literally consider it because I know how much ramp that I can produce out of it, produce out of the deck. So sometimes that's very, very hit or miss, but having the access to both green and red, even if it's just a simple, this land comes in tapped. Wow, which one am I thinking about?
And I think we both play in our lists a ton of dual lands.
Yeah, for sure. Like you look, I have Rugged Highlands in mine, which is it enters the battlefield tapped. I gain 1 life when it enters the battlefield. I mean, yeah, if that's my turn 1, I'm up 1 on everybody. That's all I'm saying.
I've tried my best to avoid lands that come in tapped. The problem is, thankfully, red green we have a ton of great dual land options that don't come in tapped.
Yeah.
But the other reason, Mikey, where I think our lists might differ slightly, and you can tell me if this is the case, is I'm playing a little bit more into what most people refer to as the forest ramp cards. So Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, and cards like that. So I really tried to get the Sheltered Thicket and the Stomping Ground in there where I can go get them, as well as Cinderglade. We have 3 dual typing dual lands that we can play, barring the original dual lands, which neither of us play. So that gives us 3 good targets for 3 Visits, Nature's Lore, and even a Skyshroud Claim or a Ranger's Path if you're playing the 4 mana ramp spells. I just play the 2 mana spells because I would really love to play them on turn 2, including Rampant Growth as well, because they're all really great spells. So I've kind of focused some of my dual lands on being searchable. The rest of them have to have some good value when they come down to make it really worth it.
Yeah, so I'm looking for more or less 2 lands. One of them hopefully is a dual land. I'm looking for that easy 1 or 2 drop that I can just get out and to kind of put pressure on my opponent. I feel like even when you drop something as simple as an Elvish Mystic, which I'm running in my deck, I think I will probably run 95% of the time if I'm running a green deck. I know you like Land of War elves more, but they literally do the same thing.
There's 4 or 5 elves that do the same thing. The reason I'm not playing it in this deck is I want to keep my tribal parity there.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I don't have to get to 4 creatures and not 3 because I have that mana dork out there.
Well, I see Elvish Mystic as more of another artifact kind of thing.
Okay,
more than a creature.
I agree.
Yes, I've won a game with Elvish Mystic, which we've seen before against Como, which was hilarious. But you gotta love fogs. But still, I see him more as just an artifact that can block.
Isn't it gorgeous that we get ramp in 3 different ways? Artifacts, spells, and creatures, right?
Exactly.
So it's definitely there. I agree with you on the lands. I'm looking for 2 to 3 lands minimum. We really want to make sure that our first 2 or 3 turns are there. My star, if you have it, you seriously consider that hand, is at least 1 or 2 ramp spells.
Yeah.
I really want to see a Farseek or a Rampant Growth or a Cultivate in my first hand. If I don't, that's okay as long as I have the lands. But if there's no lands and no ramp spell, that's where my mulligan's coming from. Now, I think my second priority underneath ramp spells are wolves. We want to see those creatures in our hands since we're a creature deck. Now, I wrote in our show notes, and I love it because I think it's so understated. I wrote that a creature tutor is a huge bonus. If I can find a Signal of the Clans or a Worldly tutor, that is a huge bonus because it allows me to kind of go toolbox, pick a creature that I need, provided on what my hand is. But so mine was 2 to 3 lands, 1 or 2 ramps, 1 or 2 creatures, and then any artifact or enchantment is a bonus after that.
I can definitely agree with that. The tutoring is ridiculously good. For me, I am looking for clearly a token generator. If I have any of the Arlands in my hand, I'm going to try to keep that as much as I can. If I have something like, oh geez, I just lost the name of it. Probably like a Child of the Pack. I know it's a little more expensive. It's 4 mana, and then I have to pay 4 to get another 2/2. But it's something that I can probably get to later on in late game. I do like Somberwall and Beastmaster, giving my tokens Death Touch, and I don't just get the Wolf token, I also get a Beast and another Beast, which is nice. More creatures, the better. Granted, I'm not going the Beast route, I'm going to more the Wolf route, but still, just having the ability to give them Death Touch is really great. That's 7 mana, but again, it's a green. It's green red 101. You're gonna ramp with green. You're gonna have some removal with green and red, of course, and then you're gonna have great big creatures with green that are gonna come eventually.
If I have a 2 mana ramp spell, I will keep a 2-lane hand.
Yeah.
And in this deck, I'm playing 34 lands. You're playing 35. We're going to see some lands.
Yeah.
Quickly. So for me, I am a little bit less afraid to go for a 3 or 4 lane hand like I would need in a non-green deck.
Yes.
But especially if I can get more than 1 ramp spell in an opening hand, that's chef's kiss. That's what we're looking for.
Can definitely agree with that.
So my advice is, if you're using Mikey's list or my list, look at that ramp. Make sure you prioritize your ramp spells in which are the best, and kind of what you want to look for. The other thing is, of course, an Arcane Signet or something like that, or a Soul Ring, or whatever mana artifacts you're playing. I'm actually not running a Soul Ring in my list. I'm choosing to run the Celestis instead, to go for more of the colored ramp versus the Soul Ring, which I feel like is a grievous sin that someone is going to yell at me for in the comments. But
well, it's funny because I have both Soul Ring and Celestis in my list.
But anyway,
the
Arcane Signet or the Celestis would be a very good reason for me to keep a 2-land hand as well, because those are great mana rocks that are going to do a ton for us. So don't just look at your opening hand and say, man, I don't have a perfect 7 and I don't have a good ramp card. Sometimes those mana rocks are good enough, and they'll get you kind of moving in the right direction.
And always keep it in the back of your mind that your commander, Mr. Tovolar, can draw you cards.
Oh, yes, he can.
Yes, he can. So the gas is going to be there if you get the advantageous attacks that you want. Now, yes, he can get countered, he can get removed, so on and so on. But never think that way, I think. I think you have to have a mindset of, like, this is my strategy, this is my plan. Because I find myself doing this when I just brew decks. I want to try to think about, oh, this player could have a bolt, this guy could have a counter, this person could play an enchantment that tells me I can't play creatures anymore. Cool. So I try to play around that, but then I'll stop and get bogged down because I feel like that just destroys my strategy. And I feel like, to anybody who's listening, like, just remember that you have built your deck, and we have built these decks in this scenario to fit a certain strategy. Tovolar is going to give you that strategy if you continue to push for it, or as you like to say, poo-whoosh for it.
But he enables it, right? I think we built both of our decks so that he is an enabling piece. He's not the cornerstone.
Right.
And I think that's the huge difference, is we're playing with a 3-mana commander who becomes 5 and then 7 and then 9, right? So we have to be careful when we choose to run Tovolar out into the board to potentially into some removal. So I think the good thing we've done with both of our lists is try to create as much advantage around him without him, where he just makes our strategy even better. Because, Mikey, I think we've both been in scenarios in a Commander game where he starts costing 7 or 9, and you're like, is 9 mana really worth it? Yeah. And when you get to that point, we need to have a strategy outside of him. I think a good point to Mikey here to talk about, we of course are two different brewers. We brew decks differently. We talked in our intro episode. If you haven't heard our intro episode, please go listen to it, because we talk about this idea of a staple binder or staple cards.
Yeah.
That's led me to put 5 or 6 pricey cards into my list that I think for the average listener, you don't have them. I want to acknowledge it, and I want to give you as the listener some budget options and kind of some caveats. So the 6 pricey cards that I'm talking about in my list, and Mikey, you can tell me whether you have them in your list as well. The first 2 I want to talk about are Natural Order and the Great Henge. Natural Order is a sorcery that says you can sacrifice a green creature, go find any green creature out of your deck, and put it on the battlefield for free. This is one of those cards in this deck that I'm going to tell you really want, even in both of our strategies, because we can sack a token.
Yep.
Go get a creature.
That
green. Goes and gets Xenagos. That goes and gets a lot of green creatures in our deck. Natural Order, the last time I checked, is at about $12, depending on what, and of course more, depending on which printing you get of it. So it can be a pricey card, but I think it enables a lot of what we're trying to do in our deck. And the second, which is a harder pill to swallow, is the Great Henge. The Great Henge, unfortunately, is a very expensive card because it's a green staple, especially in a creature deck like ours. 2 mana, taps for 2 mana. Every creature that comes in that isn't a token gets a +1/+1 counter, and we draw a card. And then we gain life when we tap it for mana. I think, unfortunately, it's too good not to play. So if you're the listener out there who's just starting your Magic the Gathering career and building your decks, I'm sorry that I put a $40 artifact into this deck. But I advise, if you want to play green, to buy one. I think it's good in every single green deck you're going to build, as long as it cares about creatures, and that's the caveat there. I don't want to replace it. I think it's too good to replace. That leads me into the other 4 that I'm going to say that you have options to replace. The first is Sword of Feast and Famine. Now, Mikey, I notice you're not playing Sword of Feast and Famine. You're playing the Wolf Token Sword.
It is the Sword of Body and Mind.
Now, I'm playing Sword of Feast and Famine because it untaps our lands, which is huge. That allows us to get more creatures on board. I know that Sword of Feast and Famine is not a cheap card. I believe it's over $40. So my advice as far as budget alternatives, and I use budget in quotations, Bear Umbra is about $10. It does the same thing. Or Embercleave is about $5 or $6. Both of them do the same thing. They give us advantage when we attack. Embercleave is even almost better because you can play it at instant speed as long as you're attacking, and that's huge to kind of trap your opponents. So I can understand why Sword of Feast and Famine wouldn't be a card that people would want to play. The next big one that hurts me is Worldly Tutor. Mikey, I don't know about your list, but my list plays Signal the Clans, which is a cheaper tutor for 1 red and 1 green that says you go pick 3 creatures with different names, and you basically pick one at random. That one goes into your hand, and the other 2 go back into your deck. Well, that gives us a choice of the 3, but it doesn't really give us a choice of which one we get. Worldly Tutor gives us a choice and puts it right on top. And with how many ways we have to draw cards in our deck, Worldly Tutor is great. Worldly Tutor is like a $30 card, though. So I can definitely understand why someone wouldn't want to play a Worldly Tutor, especially if you don't have one. So my advice to play from my list is a card that I think would do a ton of good in a deck like this, and that's an artifact called Pyre of Heroes. It's an artifact that allows you for 2 mana to sacrifice a creature and go get a creature that has I think it's a 1 or 2 higher CMC than that creature. So we can take one of our wolf tokens and go get a werewolf that has 1 or 2 CMC, or we can sack one of our werewolves and go get one of our bigger werewolves. I am not main decking Pyre of Heroes because
Worldly Tutor is just better.
It just doesn't fit for what I'm trying to do. There's so many other we're going to get to 2 of the other cards of the reasons why Pyre of Heroes doesn't fit, but I think it's a very good card to consider in a maybe board situation. The last 2 are what I'm calling win enablers. These are 2 cards that are most of the time going to threaten to win the game, and I would be very surprised if you don't win the game when you play them. They are Mikey's 2 of his least favorite cards to watch me play in green. That is Triumph of the Hordes and Finale of Devastation. Triumph of the Hordes is going to be a lot easier for you, the listener, to acquire because it's a $12 card. So it's going to be a little bit easier for you to acquire because it's not as expensive. Finale of Devastation, the last time I checked, is I think $40. So it's going to be a little bit harder. But they both do a similar thing. Triumph of the Hordes is going to give all our creatures +1/+1, trample, and infect. Infect is a mechanic where instead of dealing damage to players, they give them poison counters, and when a player gets 10 poison counters, they automatically lose. With a big board, Triumph of the Hordes most of the time will hopefully win us the game. Finale of Devastation is a creature tutor. If you pay less than 10 mana into the X, you just get the creature of your choice. But if you pay 10 or more into the X, your creatures get +X/+X and haste. And that is absolutely huge in a deck like this when you get to that mana. So I know that both of these cards are going to be very prohibitively inexpensive for most players. And so I think you should run an Overrun or an Overwhelming Stampede, or even both in both of those slots. It's going to do you the same thing, and I think it's going to give you the same goal. But I prefer to use the more expensive ones because, again, I have the Staple Binder and I have access to those cards, and so I choose to play them. But I can understand specifically for those 4 why they may be prohibitively expensive and why we'd want to give other options. The 5th one I just thought off the top of my head is Wooded Foothills. I am playing a Wooded Foothills in my land base. You don't need it if you're playing a lot more of the basic lands. You're probably better off playing a Fabled Passage or even a Evolving Wilds in that spot if you're playing more basics. I just have the dual lands, so I am playing the Wooded Foothills. Mikey, are there any cards that you have in your deck that you think might be prohibitively expensive, and so you want to give maybe some alternate options?
Yeah, for sure. The same thing, Worldly Tutor, Pyre of Heroes, but also, I don't know why I didn't have Natural Order in here. I literally just swapped in Natural Order for, I don't even remember what card I just took out. It doesn't even matter because Natural Order is better. Just 100% better.
But in our decks, the reason I say Natural Order is it almost gets any creature in our deck.
Yeah.
There might be some examples of red creatures that don't have green, and I think on my list that's 4, and your list it might be 2. But most of our creatures are green, which means Natural Order is really going to go get us just about anything we need.
We're not green players, I promise.
But we are, though, 100%.
100%. But also, an argument that I was making, earlier today, I can swap out. I feel okay with this. Most people probably won't feel okay with this, which I understand. But I feel okay with swapping out the Great Hinge for something like a Zertaw Druid. I know, again, it is a creature that is not a werewolf, so keeping with or a wolf in my case. So keeping with the same tribe is not the same thing here, but it does still give you a mana, and when you tap it, it does deal 1 damage to each opponent, which is nice. In my opinion, we'll talk about this later when we talk about some of the weird cards that we have in our deck, or I can talk about it now, actually.
I just did talk about it now.
Yeah. So I also have one card that some people don't really know, and it's called Destructive Reveille. And it's a destroy target artifact or enchantment, and Destructive Reveille deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So I can destroy your mana rock, and then I get to do 2 damage to you for, a red and a green. 2 mana to do 2 damage and destroy.
It's beautiful.
An artifact or enchantment, that's great. So you have something like Zertaw, where, it gives you the mana. It costs, I believe it is...
just red-green?
It's red-green as well,
and you ping that 1 damage, which is
you ping that 1 damage, which is always good. So, I mean, in my opinion, there's value there to just continue to put pressure on your opponents. Even if it's just 1 damage, it doesn't seem like much at the beginning of a game, but of course it's going to continue to add up over time, and then hopefully the good part about something like Zertaw is it's not like the Great Hinge. When someone sees the Great Hinge, we're all like, oh, we got to get that bad boy off the table. The cool thing about Zertaw is it's a cheaper spell, for one. It doesn't do everything you want it to do, but what you can do is continue to start pinging people for that damage, and then eventually they'll be like, dude, that's getting really annoying. Can I just get that off the board now?
5 turns in a row is 5 damage.
To everybody.
That's a ton.
So do the math. That's 15 damage for 2 mana over 5 turns. That's...
I think for my deck as well, if the Great Hinge is your hinge point, I would advise either a Soul Ring or even a Gruul Signet isn't a bad choice to put in. I don't play the Gruul Signet just because I don't really like running Signets in green decks because I really feel like you have enough ramp to get around it. But I can understand the Great Hinge being a barrier for some people, and I think putting a Gruul Signet in its spot doesn't really hurt your strategy. It might lose you some advantage, but it still gets you what you need, which is mana.
And I'm gonna continue going into like another weird card that I have, because I'm going to go to my grave, saying this is one of the best green cards out there. And until somebody proves it otherwise, and until I lose a game when I play this card, I'm gonna continue to play it, and I'm gonna continue to say that it is one of the best green cards, and that is Winds of Kalsisma. That card is incredible.
It's so good.
I don't care what anybody says. For 1 colorless and 1 green, you prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. So, thank you for the fog. But then you have Ferocious, which, if you're playing green, Millzy, we should have Ferocious, correct?
We hopefully should.
We're playing green. So it should be there. And it says, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, instead prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control. So thanks for the fog, but now I even get to say thanks for the fog. Oh, by the way, I get to do damage to your creatures, and your creatures just basically tap. Thanks, buddy.
Your blocks become radically better with Winds of Kalsisma. I think more than often than not, you're using Winds of Kalsisma to stop yourself from dying, probably. Yep. But the good part is here is you can pick some blocks, and you might throw your opponent off with how you're blocking, and then damage step. Winds of Kalsisma, my blockers still get to do damage. I may even get to take out your attackers, and I don't lose my blockers.
Exactly.
And that can be huge, especially in a creature deck where we're trying to win via combat.
Yes, exactly. And I'm going to put it in every single creature-based deck that I have, because it is just that good. I've played it so many times throughout my entire Magic life, and it has pulled me out of so many sticky situations. We saw it last time we played, where I was playing Xenagos, and I felt like I should not have won that game when there were how many coma coils out? Like 12, 18 at a time?
Yeah, well, that was a game that I would love to like talk more about when we have more time to like actually break down that game. But you played 2 fogs, and both of the fogs saved us as a table.
Yes.
Because it allowed one of us to try to claw back into the game. Now that ended up being you, because the rest of the table kind of banded together and saved the game. But I don't think fogs are cards that people play enough.
I agree. And
man, think about fogging into let's say our wolf decks were going against each other. If I Triumph of the Hordes and you play a fog in response, man, you just wasted my Triumph of the Hordes, because now I can't do anything.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's so huge.
Or you Finale of Devastation, and you've put 12 mana into a spell, because I believe it's 2 green and an X, correct? So you put 12 mana into a spell, yikes, and then...
Or look at a red deck who's trying to finish with a big red spell that deals damage. Or maybe someone has a Crater Hoof in green.
Well, it is combat damage, so with the red, like if I played spell, I'm still going to do that damage to you. But if I did have like any kind of dragon that would slap you in the face for 20 damage, then yeah, that would be a different story.
I think I'm thinking of... there are other fogs that actually complete all damage.
Yeah.
I apologize. Winds of Kalsisma does only prevent combat damage. Yeah. That's my fault. It would still work, though, in the Triumph for the Hordes case. It would still work against Crater Hoof. It would still work against a lot of... cool part also here, helps with Death Touch, right? Because Death Touch only works if you deal 1 damage. You can block something with Death Touch for free because...
It ain't doing anything.
It ain't doing any damage.
I love that card, and I'm going to go to my grave every single time. If there's a green deck and it has creatures, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to keep bringing it up. And dadgummit, you better be putting it in your deck. I'm kidding. You don't have to. But do it anyway, just for my sake. My sanity. Please.
Well, Mikey, I think this brings us towards the end of our fun discussion about Tovolar.
Oh, my goodness. So much fun.
I don't know about you, but I had a really fun time building this deck. Now, I'll be candid and admit that this deck was built before we came up with this idea. This is a personal deck of mine.
Yeah.
My list. So let's answer the question, would I build this deck? The answer is, of course, for me. This was one of the most important commanders that I was excited about for our Innistrad block. It is everything that I want from a Gruul deck, and I am happy to build it. I did have it built. I am going to go the sad boy route, and I am actually going to wait and put all of the new double feature black and white werewolves in my deck, because I know that people don't like them, and I think it's just going to be fun to use them. But yes, I plan to build this deck.
Yeah, for me, I wrote this down of I know that this isn't like a top tier deck. I know that my deck isn't going to be, on EDH Rex, like top deck, whatever, who cares? Because when you think tokens, you don't really think Tovolar at all, but he's still a goodest of boy, and I thought it was a really fun thing to consider, and I thought that most people would consider something else, so this would be just something to try. And maybe one day, I'll probably put it together and give it a test, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. For me, I like wolves as much as everybody else, and I would love to put together a wolf tribal deck, but that will definitely come after my bird tribal deck. So
I think wolves play maybe a little bit better into Selesnya.
Yeah.
With something like Tolemir, is that her name? The legendary creature from Ravnica, who cares a lot more about I can't remember her name. Green-white legendary creature from Ravnica. My gut would say Ravnica Allegiance, but I could be wrong. But she cares a lot about wolves, gives you tokens. I think a lot more of the wolves land better into Selesnya than they do into Gruul, but isn't it cool that we have the option for both, because they always have been both. As well as you get to play Mowu and the Planeswalker Jangu there, who is his buddy, and so you get some more flavor, maybe that isn't Innistrad, but
Mowu and Jangu.
So as a quick reminder to everybody, it's Tolsimir, that's her name, I just remembered. Anyway, as a reminder to everyone, our deck lists are going to be linked down into the show notes as a link to our Moxfield deck page. That page is going to have every deck that we're going to do for head-to-head. If you listen to this when this episode releases, the only decks you're going to be able to see are going to be our Tovolar decks, but if you were to go to that page in the future, you'll get to see every deck that we've done for these head-to-head episodes, and believe me, there are some more fun ones to come. At least for the moment, we are planning on doing 7 or 8 episodes when it comes to Innistrad, both from Midnight Hunt and from Crimson Vow, so we have a lot more fun commanders coming from this set, as well as we hope to in the future to be doing some Kamigawa Neon Dynasty commanders when those come out. And eventually we'll start looking back and doing some older commanders. But we really decided to start with Innistrad. It's the most recent thing, and we figured people would be interested in seeing our takes on some of these commanders. Mikey, do you want to tease our next episode?
Ooh, how can I tease this? Do you like... Screw it. Do you like blue?
Well, no, but I mean, I'm just kidding.
Well, this is true. We no one likes blue. Do you like blue with black?
Okay.
Do you like blue with black with nothing else? Because that's all this commander has in their color combo is blue and black.
Do you like a commander that transforms?
Oh well, you've just given it away.
I haven't actually.
Oh.
There are two blue-black commanders that transform in these two sets.
Oh no, who could it be?
I'll warn you that it's who you're thinking it is. Should we tell them? Should we tell
the
listeners?
They can wait. They
can wait. You will hear next week who our commander is going to be, and hopefully you enjoy the head-to-head experience for that commander as much as we have. But Mikey, that's all I got. Do you have anything else for our listeners today?
Just a see you later, farewell. Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye. Have a good night.